This is Ziggy, and this is Ziggy's roadmap to success. Ziggy is a very, very smart dog, and she's very treat motivated, as you can see. She's a little pocket rocket. She's pretty athletic, and she's a cattle dog, so she is a herding breed. And so we need to, the Guardians are going to need to work on getting her, let me see your paws. Your nails are a little bit long. Make sure you're on those because if they get too long, they can actually split down the middle, and sometimes you have to amputate the entire nail. They do not grow back like ours. Well, especially if you amputate ours, probably wouldn't either. But we just don't, especially drier climate, that's when they're more prone to cracking. So just, you might want to get a Dremel or just, try to get them a little bit shorter. All right, so in this video, I just want to kind of summarize what we covered in the session. So we started off talking about exercise. You can see she's a very high energy dog. I showed the Guardians a robot that they can get that kind of rolls around the house and just spits out treats. It's kind of autonomic. And so I would recommend getting one of those. I got the link for you. You might also want to get, since she loves to fetch and the ball is so important to her, get an automatic ball fetching machine. iFetch is one that would work great. It's an indoor one. I would put it right over here and aim it at the stairs. We kind of have a split level entry to the house. And this way she can go grab it, drop the ball in it, it spits it out and runs down, goes down the basement. She runs down and gets it and comes back and exercises herself. Now, she is kenneled during the day. She's kenneled a little bit longer than I would like her. You shouldn't really kennel a dog for longer than 4 hours. It produces cortisol in their blood. And that's a stress hormone. It can lead to a lot of other issues. And so also they're kind of in there percolating, saving up their energy all day long, and then they come out, they're ready to explode. Does she just explode out of the kennel when you come home? Mm-hmm. So if you go to my website and go to, just search for kennel training. If you go to doggonproblems.com, click on dog training tips. On the right side of the page, there'll be a little box you can search if you're doing it on a laptop. And then go in there and type that in and look for a kennel training. What I do is I basically toss the treat in the kennel, let the dog go in and get it until it goes in there without any hesitation. Then I stand there blocking the kennel door with my feet with the door open. So I'm blocking the dog from exiting. And I wait for the dog to sit or lie down before I let it out. Well, when you come home, you should do kind of a version of that. Come home, open the kennel door a little bit, but then insert your legs right before you open the door so your legs are blocking her from coming out. And wait for her to sit. And as soon as she sits, take a step backwards and say, come. And then after she sits right away, then you would maybe ask her to sit or wait for her to lay down before you let her come out. So sitting is the first one. You don't go to lay down until she's going in there pretty much. She's sitting right away as soon as you come up there. What we're saying is, again, operant conditioning. When I come over, if you sit and you're calm, I let you out of the kennel. If you're trying to paw at it and get it all excited, I'm just going to stand here with the kennel door open with my legs blocking you until you sit. As soon as you sit, boom, you get invited out. And after enough repetitions of that consistently, but pay attention. So the instant she sits down, I mean, like within a fifth of a second, you want to be calling her out. And then once she does that consistently, she's laying down then or sitting, then we maybe have her lay down and wait for her to lay down before, and as soon as she does, she will let her out. Like she just lay down, she's such a smarty pants. And then eventually just lay down, and then I take a step backwards. And if she comes forward, if she gets up and tries to come out, I just take a step forward. I'm blocking the kennel with my legs again. Wait for her to lay down, take a step backwards. If she stays that way, maybe a second, and then I call her out. Maybe next time I take 2 steps backwards and wait 4 seconds. So the idea is teaching her just because the door's open doesn't mean you have permission to run out. And if she runs out full of beans, that's the energy she's going to carry around with her. Now, part of it, like I said, probably in there a little bit too long. Also, exercising her. I went through some creative ways of exercising. Start an exercise journal like I talked about. That I think will really help for about 2 to 4 weeks. And remember, playing around with the elements. If it's not an A day, the next day, give it a couple more repetitions of the fetch or whatever the exercise is, or throw in a whole extra game of the exercise. And keep on doing that until she gives you an A letter day. Then you know how much exercise she needs. And again, these are creative. The creative ways I showed you inside will be a lot easier. And they don't, or just don't at least require you to go outside in the winter when it's not very nice. Also, this does not feel good. So what you might want to do is get a Dremel. And a Dremel will allow you to kind of round off the edges of the nail. And that way when she does that, what she's doing now that doesn't feel good, if I react, then that's going to cause her to continue doing it. So now that's where the treats are. I just try to keep her in the shot. But how about we do this instead of you making my hand all raw? Come here. Sit. But you see her focus is great. So that's why the Guardian's been watching some of my videos. I would watch the focus and do that focus exercise and follow the steps along until you can have a strong focus. That way when she sees another dog at a great distance, say focus, she looks up at you. Now you might want to also look at about 2, I think, session write-ups below this one on my website is one about a blue heeler named Scout. where I taught, that also is a dog aggression issue, where I taught through free shaping to turn away from the other dog. And so if you watch that video, that might help out as well. Also a little tip that we didn't talk about in the session, I've been saving it for this, is we have a trail behind here. Well, not a trail, but a street and a sidewalk right behind the house. And there's a fence that buttresses it. So she goes and barks at people walking up and down that. So what I would do when weather is nice, if you want to fix that problem, I usually, when there's not snow on the ground, I use like shredded cheese or string cheese. Just get the string cheese and slice it like little slices of pepperoni. So you have a bunch of like quarter-size medallions of white string cheese. What I would do then is have one of you on this side of your property line and one of you on that side of your property line at the same time when there's gonna be a lot of people walking by. Usually probably like when school gets out or like around 4:30 to 6 o'clock, probably gonna be a lot of traffic, people walking their dogs. Well, what you do is ask just people, you'll be right outside your property line, just tell people, hey, we've got a dog that likes to bark like crazy when people come by. Would you mind just tossing these treats over the fence as long as you're walking along the fence? So they come and just as she starts barking, she sees these little white things that are white on the grass, so it'll be easy for her to see with the contrast. They're colorblind. And then, and you're just walking and throw 5 or 6 of these, however long it takes every 3 or 4 steps. And the same thing this direction. So now she's like, well, I had it all wrong. I thought these people are invaders. They're not infidels. They're here. These are just cheese delivery people. They're just here to service me. I shouldn't be barking at them. I should be thanking them. And after a while, she'll like it when people come by, and eventually you can drop off the treats. But if you do it like on a day where it's a nice spring day and there's a ton of people walking by and you get like maybe 50 people in like a half an hour or however many, you want to get a large repetition of it. She's like, again, the more dogs into repetition, consistency, and good timing. I went over that at the beginning of the session. So remember, you have 3 seconds to correct or reward the dog for them to have the ability to make the connection. She's very determined. Down. Down. Remember, every time you give a treat, give the treat first, then say the command word immediately after while the dog is still chewing the treat, but after it goes in their mouth. That'll make them look at that word a little bit more favorably. Also, speaking of words, try to come up with funny command words. I like the guardians to teach her some new tricks or commands. Try to come up with fun command words. You can say, roll over, but I say stunt dog. You can say, dog bed, but we're saying Joe Boo. So we come up with these funny command words that make people laugh that has added motivation for her. So try to come up with a funny command word that's somewhat related to it. I'd also come up with one for food. Right now, what is the word you guys say? Or you say wait or something like that?
Oh, we just make her wait and then say ready.
Ready is the word that means to eat. What I would do is use a passive training for that. So when she takes her first bite of food, say lasagna. Or whatever the food is you want, your favorite dish or your favorite restaurant. So that way she's waiting, and then for the first 2 months you do this, every time she takes her first bite of food, you say pasta. Well, eventually you say pasta, and she'll run over and eat her food because she knows that's my word to eat. When the other dog hears pasta, there's no food in her mouth. When she hears pasta, there's food in her mouth. So that's how you would use passive training to help assign a command word for that. So come up with new command words, and I'd like the guardians to teach her some new tricks or commands. Now, we might supplement it by having James come over to work with them on a loose leash, because right now they're using a gentle lead, or it goes around the dog's snout, and she does not like it. And she communicates she doesn't like it. We want to use a tool that she likes. We want her to enjoy the walk, but also give the tools to the guardian so that the dog is able to control itself. But teaching her new tricks can really boost her self-esteem. It also helps the dog respect the humans as an authority figure. I would not do anything that involves her putting her paws on you, like shake, she already knows that, but any other, like high fives or something like that, because she already is putting her paws up too much. We want to do disengaging sort of things, like do a circle, do a hurricane, do a rollover, play dead, get me a beer from the fridge, or whatever it is. So now the dog has other things it can do, so if it's misbehaving, you redirect it to doing something else. But if it's like, if she's putting her paws on you and you say shake, well, I'm already doing that. So we want to look for some funny ones. What I recommend you do is there's 2 guardians in the house. I would like to have the guardians switched. So week 1, guardian A teaches on Sunday, whatever the trick is. And then all week long, once the dog knows it, and teach them separately. And I would teach both dogs if you can. And then once the dogs know what the trick is, then all week long, you want to go out the door, roll over. You want to go for a walk, roll over. Or a stunt dog, or whatever it is. But all week long, before you do anything, she has to do that particular trick. Then the next week, the other guardian would take over and teach a different trick. If you teach rollover, teach play dead the next week, those kind of go hand in hand. At the end of, and each guardian should do it with 4 tricks. So that way, at the end of 2 months, the dog should know 8 new commands. That's 8 new ways to redirect them. That's 8 new lessons where we can come across as the authority figure, and the dog will have a deeper respect for us because we're associated with them assigning or coming up with a new command word or trick or something that boosts their self-esteem. Now, we also talk thank you, sweetheart, kisses. That would be passive training. We'll talk about passive training. Every time the dog does something voluntarily on its own without any influence, and you pet it and say the command word within that 3-second window. So every time she comes to you, pet her and say come. Every time she sits, pet her and say sit, preferably under the chin. And remember not to say good sit, just sit. And eventually, if she does anything unusual, like one of my dogs stretches, and I pet him and say stretch, and I give him the treat. And I can say stretch 10 times in a row, and he'll do it. So come up with those funny command words, and that she's being a herding breed, she needs rules, but also being a smart dog, the more mental stimulation she gets, the better. So don't disregard scent games. Just real quick summarize, scent games, tossing the treat up and down the stairs, having her chase a laser, playing fetch, and then the herding ball that she's doing already in the backyard. But we want to come up with a variety of things so the dog has the ability that's a little operating. So as soon as she puts her paw on me, I'm pulling it away. I want her to understand that the paw is not going to get it for her. And this would be a great way to tell her to leave it. Actually, to teach leave it, what you do is you do this. You wait, and then you would give the dog a treat from your other hand and say leave it when she disengages. Also, I have that video, a whole bunch of different versions of it on my website. So feel free to go and teach her that. But that's also another great command to learn. Look for ways to develop self-control, like teaching your dog to stay, making them drop the ball before you pick it up and throw it. Kind of adding, and I talked to the guards about playing a little hard to get, but we want to make sure that the dog, and that's okay, we want to make sure that the dogs learn to, if the more they earn their reward, the more they're going to feel better about themselves and deeper respect for us as authority figures. So for passive training, come up with a word. I say testify, but you can use whatever word you want. Wait for the dog to organically offer you the behavior, then reward it, and assign the command word for it, a single word command. We also went over petting with a purpose. Petting with a purpose is when the dog is initiating contact with you, nudging you or pawing at you, which what she does, or barking for attention. If you pet it, you're saying, yeah, you're in charge of me. So instead, if she wants my attention, I say sit. If she sits within 3 seconds, I reach over and pet her and give her attention or a treat or whatever I want to give her. If she's already sitting here, I might ask her to come and sit over here or ask her to lay down. I'm going to ask her to change her state if she's demanding attention from me by pawing at me. Now, after a while, what will happen is she'll flip the leader-follower dynamic. Instead of telling you what to do, she'll ask. So at that point, I'll say, sit, sit. Well, at that point, what she'll do is she'll actually come up and do this. She'll prepay for the attention, sit, and offer you behavior that you've asked her to do in the past, once you've done it enough times. And when she does that, make sure to reach over and pet her and say sit, and preferably under the chin, and say just the command word, and you can pet her as long as you want. And we use the word paycheck. If one of you comes in the room and sees the other one is petting the dog and the dog is standing up, you say paycheck. That should be translated as, I think you may have forgotten to pet with a purpose. So don't argue about it. Immediately stop petting. Say sit. When she sits, pet her and say sit. Say, actually, I asked her to sit when you flushed the toilet. She stood up and I continued petting, and David said that's allowed, which it is. Now, even if you want to pet the dog, make sure that you ask the dog to do something first. Right here, sit. So she didn't do it. I'm not going to say it multiple times because that would be teaching her to ignore me and also validating that I have no authority, because when you don't do what I want, I just keep on repeating it. Sit. So who blinks first? If I just go ahead and give her the attention anyways, well, then I'm going to continue doing it my way. Well, if she wants that attention, she's going to have to do the smallest thing she can do as a dog and sit. And as soon as she sits, I would put this treat in her mouth so fast she's not going to be able to believe it. But the more that happens, the more that inclined her to want to go and do that thing. We taught her to use a dog bed in about 7 minutes just by doing the same version of this. Sit. You see how quickly that, as soon as that butt hits the ground, boom, that treat's there quick. Okay, we also went over I went over 3 of my 4 escalating consequences to disagree with unwanted actions or behaviors. Number 1 is to hiss 1 time per incident. Match the energy of your hiss with the dog's energy. Number 2 is to stand up abruptly, turn to face the dog. Keep the dog in front of you till it stops moving. Stands, sits, or lies down. When it does, take 2 steps backwards and pause for 1 second. Then go back to doing what you're doing. But if what you're doing is sitting down like I am, it's not good English, but you know what I'm saying. But if sitting is what you were doing before, you should expect the dog to challenge again. So don't sit deeply on the couch, sit on the edge of the couch so that you can bounce up right away, and you should expect to have to. The third consequence is to march deliberately at the dog until it turns sideways or greater away from you. At that point, you freeze, put your feet together, and then pivot. Keep that dog in front of you until it stops moving, and take those 2 steps backwards like I talked about. The only time that doesn't apply is if the dog is in a designated no dog zone. If it turns sideways and it's not supposed to be on the carpet because we have food here, I'm going to still march directly at it until it gets the entry point. That's where I would stop enforcing the boundary. Now, before I go over the rules, which is usually one of the first things I go, I'm going to be one of the last things here. I want to go over a little way that you can get your dog to listen or to behave that you want. I do this by setting up scenarios to help the dog practice the behavior that I want. So what I would do is, if we're going to eat, you talk about cooking in the kitchen first because it's easier. So basically, before we go in the kitchen, that would be one of the rules, not being allowed to be in there. Well, how do you enforce that? Well, we march towards with the third consequence. Before we do that, though, I want to thank you. She's going to positive reinforcement. You're a smarty. So we want to teach them to leave the room. I showed the guardians how to teach the dog to leave the room and to go to the room. So make sure you do that first. So when you say out, the dog knows what you mean. Next thing, what I would do is I would go into the kitchen, and as soon as you cross the threshold, turn around to face her. And if she crosses the threshold, march directly at her until she gets across the threshold. Stop at the line, wherever the threshold is. Then take one step backward, left foot, right foot, stop. She's going to come forward, take 2 steps, rush towards her again right away, stopping at the line. So you have to do a waltz. So be back and forth and back and forth. Sorry about that, sweetheart. And eventually she'll stay behind the line and she'll sit or lie down. When she does, take a big step backwards and then pause for a second. She stays and put. Take another step backwards. You're facing her. Remember, your authority goes whatever direction your belly button's pointing. Once you can walk all the way in the kitchen, now we're ready to start practicing staying out of the kitchen while we're cooking. But if we're cooking, we're distracted. We're thinking about the ingredients and everything else. So what we do instead is we would get a piece of bacon or roast beef or Canadian bacon or any sort of lunch meat, put it in the microwave and cook it, and then put it on the table. Now it's going to smell very attractive to the dog. It's going to want to come in the kitchen. So you march directly towards her. And you keep on doing it, and then you simulate cooking. You turn the stove on, you grab some pots and pans, you bang them around, grab stuff out of the fridge. It looks and smells like you're cooking, but because you're not cooking, you're actually doing this just for her benefit. So as soon as she crosses the threshold, boom, you're instantly on her like white on rice. So remember, the timing is super duper important. So if you do that consistently, after a while, she's just like, man, I think she must have a hole in the back of her head. She just sees everything. And once the dog sits or lies down beyond the boundary, then we actually just start our actual cooking. And it doesn't look like we changed anything, but we've helped the dog warm up for that. I'd also do the same thing when we eat at the table. We'd eat at the table there, and then eat at the table in the living room. Put some roast beef there, cut it up, and put it on each plate. We kind of cut it up in little pieces. Pretend like we're doing our meal, but instead of actually shoveling food in our mouth, we're watching the dog. It breaks the boundary. We get up and march towards it. I would say either the line right here to that divider in between, or you would just make all the carpet off limits when you're eating. The rest of the time she can come and go, but when you're eating, not allowed. And this way, it gives the dogs the ability to practice some self-restraint and self-control. All right, some of the rules we talked about would be not being allowed, like I said, in the kitchen, we're preparing food in the kitchen because the dining room table's there. When we're eating food, or on the carpet here, or on this line, whichever one you decide to enforce, when we're eating food out here on the table. She has to sit before we let her in or out of the door. Remember, sit once. Within 3 seconds, she doesn't sit. Walk away for a minute. Next time, walk away for 2 minutes, then 4 minutes, then 8 minutes. Let me see, not lying on the furniture. This is, enjoy it, because this might be the last time for a while. And that's why we introduce the dog bed at the same time. But for dogs, the higher they rank, the higher they sit, the more rank or social status they have. If you don't want to give up having her sleep with you in the bed, then I would just make that with an invitation only, but it would be more powerful and faster if you eliminate her ability to sleep in the bed for a while. Because again, absence makes the heart grow fonder. I want to be really well behaved so I can get back up to that bed again. Let me see. I'm trying to think of other rules. Make sure that you're eating before you feed the dogs. Right now, they're only eating once a day. It's in the evening, and that might be contributed as well. If you get a puppy or you have a young dog, you should try to feed them multiple times a day, at least twice. I prefer 3 if possible. I'm doing this because you're not very tender with my hands. But basically, the human needs to eat something first. Then I would have Maya eat something next because she's the older dog, and when she's eating, Ziggy's not allowed to be in the kitchen. And then when Maya's done, Maya leaves. We empty any remaining food in her bowl, and then Ziggy gets to come in and eat. And when Ziggy takes her first bite of food, we're going to say lasagna or whatever the word is for her to eat. And Maya's not allowed in the kitchen when Ziggy is eating. And then Ziggy, does she eat all her food? Or Okay. If she, for some reason she left her food, she walks over. Because when we're doing it now, she's probably going to be a little turn her nose up. If she does, then as soon as she walks 7 paces away from her bowl, pick up her bowl, dump it empty, put the empty bowl back down. And she'll probably come and lick the empty bowl. No more food again until the next meal. And I would feed breakfast and dinner, but she only gets dinner if she eats breakfast. We offer breakfast. And if she doesn't eat it and she walks more than 7 pieces away, like I said, we dump it, but make sure you put the empty bowl back on the ground. That's important. Otherwise, they just think you're taking away their food. And then we don't feed again until breakfast the next day. And eventually hunger kicks in and she eats. And now we're starting to jumpstart that, and we're also eating in front of her, so she sees us having more authority. And it's the most important activity for your dogs, eating is. And so we just add a little dominion over something we're going to do with the dog every day, any day, anyway. Then that really helps. That really helps her motivate. Now for the dog bed, remember at first we toss the treats to motivate her to go there, but now that she's going on her own, so right now she's looking at it, if she goes over there, and I'll throw a treat afterwards to reward her for doing the thing that we want. And when you have that, and then the video at the very top of the write up is what we just started off with this session. So basically, that's the anti-jumping, and that's using operant conditioning. So remember, no corrections, just follow the instructions there. But I would like to try to have you invite some neighbors or friends or people to come over and let them know, hey, we're gonna do this weird thing with a leash. You know, when you come in, just stand. And I have people that put a piece of painter's tape down the line so they know exactly where to stand. There we go.
Joe Boo.
She just went there on the dog bed, and I reward her after the fact for going there. But basically, that'll teach her to being calm and relaxed. People paying attention to me. When I'm excited and try to jump up on them, they show no interest. And by repeating that enough, she will figure this out on her own. This is the behavior that will get my attention. Same thing with petting with a purpose and passive training. All these things are designed to motivate the dog to want to do what we want them to do. All right, come here, sweetheart. See, even I said, come here. It's probably come. Come here. I just did it again. Come. Remember, say it twice so the dog knows it. Come as a command. When she comes to you, give her the reward or the pet, which is reward too, and then say the word come, and only say it once. Can we sit? And literally don't ask. Sit. You are kind of sitting, huh? You got a little bit of a corgi rear end, except for your legs are a lot longer and your tail is too. Well, this is Ziggy. Let's say hi to the camera, Ziggy. This is Ziggy, and this is Ziggy's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.